My head throbbed as I stepped out of the conference room. 3 hours of pitching to stone-faced executives had left me drained, my shirt collar damp with nervous sweat. All I wanted was the sanctuary of my apartment, a hot shower, and the comfort of Amanda's smile. "Dude, we're celebrating." Dan materialized beside me in the hallway, slapping my shoulder with the casual confidence I'd always envied. "That presentation was killer." "Thanks, but I think I'll head home." I checked my watch, 7:30. Amanda's probably waiting. Dan's eyebrows shot up. "Come on, one drink. I promise you a night that'll change your life." He grinned, unaware of the weight his words would carry. Outside, the sky had darkened prematurely, heavy clouds releasing a sudden downpour that drummed against the pavement. We ducked under Dan's umbrella, dodging puddles as we hurried 3 blocks to Crossroads, a name I'd later recognize as the universe's cruel joke. The bar hummed with Thursday night energy, golden light spilling from its windows like a beacon. Inside, the scent of whiskey and perfume mingled in the warm air. I shook raindrops from my coat as Dan guided me toward the bar. That's when I saw her. Not directly, but in the mirror behind the bar, a distorted reflection that somehow seemed more honest than reality. Amanda, my wife of 3 years, sat in a corner booth beneath a pendant light that cast honey-colored shadows across her face. Her fingers intertwined with those of a man I didn't recognize, their glasses meeting in a toast that seemed too intimate, too practiced. "Let's go somewhere else," Dan muttered, noticing my frozen stare. But I couldn't move. Amanda had called that morning, her voice rushed and apologetic. "Can't do dinner tonight, love. Emergency client meeting just came up. Don't wait up." I watched her laugh at something the man said, her head tilting back to expose the elegant line of her throat. She checked her phone, the same phone she'd been glued to for weeks, always just out of my view, and suddenly stiffened. Her eyes darted up and locked with mine in the mirror. Time stretched between us like taffy. Then her companion turned, following her gaze. "That's them?" Dan whispered, but I was already moving across the room, navigating between tables on legs that felt disconnected from my body. As I approached, a wave of unfamiliar perfume hit me, heavier, more sensual than the light floral scent Amanda had spritzed before leaving our apartment this morning. "Mike." My name sounded foreign on her lips, her smile too wide, too bright. What a surprise. The man stood, extending his hand. Tall, with the casual confidence of someone who'd never questioned his place in the world. His grip was firm, challenging. "Brad." His smile didn't reach his eyes. Finally meeting the man who's been trying to replace me. Amanda laughed nervously, touching his arm. "He's joking, darling." Her voice had taken on a pitch I'd never heard before. "Brad's an old friend from college. We bumped into each other and decided to catch up." Brad's eyebrow arched slightly at "old friend," a micro-expression that spoke volumes. The waitress appeared with a fresh drink for Amanda. "Your usual, as always on Thursdays," she said cheerfully, placing a martini with 2 olives in front of my wife. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. Amanda had told me she'd only been to this bar once, months ago, for a work function she couldn't avoid. "Join us." Brad gestured to the empty chair, his invitation carrying the satisfaction of a chess player who'd just announced checkmate. I slid into the seat, feeling like an actor who'd wandered onto the wrong stage, everyone but me aware of the script. "I was just telling Amanda about the sailing trip we took last summer," Brad continued, his fingers casually brushing against her hand. "Remember how seasick you got until I showed you that pressure point trick?" Amanda tucked a strand of hair behind her ear with a gesture I hadn't seen since our early dating days, a movement both shy and flirtatious that used to be reserved for me. Dan pulled up a chair from another table, inserting himself into our awkward triangle. "Hey, remember when Mike tried to cook that anniversary dinner and almost burned down the apartment?" he said, attempting to reclaim some territory in the conversation. "Brad knows much better stories," Amanda cut him off, her eyes never leaving Brad's face. I took a sip of Dan's abandoned whiskey, the burn in my throat nothing compared to the one spreading through my chest. Outside, the rain intensified, drumming against the windows like a warning I was already too late to heed. I sat at the table feeling like an understudy thrust on stage without rehearsal, fumbling for lines in a play everyone else had memorized. The noise of the bar faded to a dull hum as I watched Amanda and Brad perform their well-practiced routine. So there we were, stranded at that little coastal town. What was it called again? Brad leaned forward, his hand casually brushing Amanda's as he reached for his drink. "Portofino," Amanda supplied, her voice carrying a warmth I hadn't heard in months. "That tiny restaurant with the blue shutters. Right? Where you tried octopus for the first time." His fingers lingered on her wrist a moment too long. You were so brave. I frowned. Amanda had told me she'd first tried octopus on our honeymoon in Greece. Another small lie in what was becoming a mountain of deception. Amanda flipped her hair with that particular gesture, head slightly tilted, fingers trailing through the strands before letting them fall. It was the same move I'd seen when we first met, a gesture that had disappeared shortly after our wedding, like so many other parts of her I'd once found captivating. Dan cleared his throat. Hey, remember that camping trip when Mike fought off that raccoon that was trying to steal our cooler? He was swinging that flashlight like a lightsaber. Amanda's smile tightened. Brad knows much more interesting stories. She turned to him. Tell them about that time in Barcelona. I watched her transform before my eyes, animated, playful, genuine. The woman sitting across from me was both familiar and a stranger. Had I ever really known her? A man in a tailored suit approached our table, eyes widening when he spotted Brad. Brad, my man. Didn't expect to see you here tonight. His gaze shifted to Amanda, then to me, confusion flickering across his face. Oh, you're all together tonight? The implication hung in the air, unlike other nights. Brad stood to greet him with a practiced smile. Just catching up. You remember Amanda? Of course. The man nodded at her with familiar ease. Hard to forget. Amanda's laugh sounded brittle. James always exaggerates. As Amanda reached for her wine, her sleeve rode up, revealing a thin silver bracelet I'd never seen before. She caught me looking and quickly pulled the fabric down, but not before I noticed an identical band on Brad's wrist catching the light. The waiter appeared with a dessert, some elaborate chocolate creation with 2 spoons, that none of us had ordered. As always, for our couple of the evening, he announced proudly, placing it between Amanda and Brad. The words hit me like a physical blow. Couple of the evening. As always. Brad broke the awkward silence that followed. Amanda, your eyes in this light, they're exactly like that moonlight over the bay where we first. He trailed off, noticing my stare, but the damage was done. I excused myself to the restroom, needing a moment away from their performance. The cool tile against my palms as I leaned on the sink brought me back to reality. Was this actually happening? Had I wandered into some alternate universe where my wife belonged to another man? As I splashed water on my face, the bathroom door swung open. 2 men entered, one on his phone. I stepped into a stall, not ready to face strangers. Yeah, he's here now, the voice said, eerily similar to Brad's. Sitting with us like a lost puppy. No, he doesn't suspect anything. Everything's going according to plan. A flush of another toilet drowned out the rest of the conversation. I waited until they left before emerging, my mind racing with possibilities, each more painful than the last. When I returned to the table, the scene had shifted. Brad was leaning closer to Amanda, his hand resting possessively on the back of her chair. Something in their posture, the magnetic pull between them, told me I'd interrupted a moment. There he is, Brad announced, his smile sharp as a blade. We were just discussing old times. Were you? My voice sounded distant even to my own ears. Brad was reminding me about our college days, Amanda said, but her lipstick was slightly smudged at the corner. We had some wild adventures. I bet. I took a long drink, watching them over the rim of my glass. Dan shot me a concerned look. Maybe we should call it a night, Mike? Before I could respond, Brad leaned toward Amanda. The movement seemed choreographed, practiced. His hand sliding to her waist with familiar ease, his head tilting at the perfect angle. Their lips met in what was clearly meant to appear as a spontaneous, friendly kiss. But it lingered too long for just friends. His hand traced her spine with practiced intimacy, finding its place as if it had mapped that territory countless times before. The worst part wasn't the kiss itself. It was the moment Amanda's eyes opened during it, finding mine. There was no shame there, no embarrassment at being caught. Instead, I saw something that turned my blood to ice. A challenge, a defiance, as if daring me to finally see the truth that had been performing right in front of me all along. Dan's hand clamped onto my shoulder, his grip tight enough to anchor me to reality. Let's go, he whispered, but I couldn't move, transfixed by the theatrical tragedy unfolding before me. Brad pulled away from Amanda but kept his arm draped across her shoulders, his expression that of a chess champion who just declared checkmate. I felt a chill creep up my spine despite the warmth of the crowded bar. You should see your face right now, Mike. Amanda's laughter carried no warmth, it was hollow, rehearsed, like an actress reciting a poorly written line. Oh, Brad, you're always so predictable. The speakers overhead crackled before the opening notes of Every Breath You Take by The Police filled the room. The irony wasn't lost on me, A song about obsession and surveillance playing as my marriage unraveled before my eyes. Every bond you break, every step you take, I'll be watching you. Something snapped inside me. I jerked forward, knocking over my glass. Red wine splashed across the table, finding its target on Amanda's cream-colored dress. The stain spread like a bloodstain across her lap, a visual metaphor for the wound being carved into our marriage. Mike. She jumped up, grabbing napkins. Brad calmly reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a white handkerchief. "Allow me, like in the old days," he said, his voice low and intimate as he dabbed at her dress with practiced familiarity. I watched, paralyzed, as Amanda turned away from me and whispered something in Brad's ear. They both smiled, a private joke at my expense. My stomach twisted as I recognized the body language of two people who shared secrets, history, and far more than casual friendship. "I need some air." I stood so abruptly that my chair screeched against the floor, drawing glances from nearby tables. Amanda sighed dramatically. "Don't make a scene." "A scene? Is that what this is to you? Some kind of performance?" Dan stood beside me, his hand firm on my shoulder. "You deserve better than this farce," he whispered, guiding me toward the door. Amanda followed us, but Brad remained seated, watching our exit with the detached interest of a spectator at a sporting event. Outside, the earlier drizzle had intensified into a torrential downpour. Water cascaded from awnings and splashed up from the pavement as cars drove by. I walked straight into it, welcoming the cold shock against my heated skin. "Mike, wait," Amanda called, opening her umbrella but holding it only over herself, another small but telling gesture. "How long?" I asked, rain plastering my hair to my forehead, running down my face like the tears I refused to shed. "You're being ridiculous," she deflected, staying dry beneath her shelter while I dripped onto the sidewalk. "Brad is an old friend. Old friends don't look at each other the way you two do." Our argument drew attention from people hurrying past, ducking under storefronts to escape the rain. Our marriage was being put on trial with strangers as jurors. "You want to do this here? Fine." Amanda's voice hardened. "You've suffocated me with your predictability, Mike. Every day with you is like reading a book where all the pages are identical." She stepped closer, her umbrella tilting to keep her dry while rain continued to soak me. "I know exactly what you'll say, what you'll do, what you'll want for dinner on any given day of the week." "When did the first lie become easier than the truth?" I asked, my voice barely audible over the rain drumming against her umbrella. Her strategy shifted from defense to offense. "You don't even see me anymore. Did you notice I changed my hair color last month? Or that I've lost weight? Or that I've been miserable?" As she spoke, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out to see a message from an unknown number. "She's been meeting him every Thursday for the past 6 months." Amanda's eyes darted to my screen. With lightning speed, she snatched the phone from my hand and flung it into the street. I watched in stunned silence as a passing car drove over it with a sickening crunch. "That was completely unnecessary," I said, too shocked to even be angry. "Like this conversation." She turned away, flagging down a taxi. "I'm going home. Come or stay, your choice." The ride back to our apartment was silent except for Amanda's hushed phone conversation. She sat as far from me as the backseat allowed, her body angled away as she spoke in low tones about work emergencies that required her immediate attention. I noticed she lowered her voice further whenever the taxi rounded corners, as if afraid I might suddenly hear more clearly. The driver caught my eye in the rearview mirror. "Sometimes it's better to know the truth even if it breaks your heart," he said philosophically, apparently commenting on the radio news story and not our situation. But as Amanda shot him a venomous glare, I wondered if the universe was sending me messages through every available channel, messages I'd been too blind to see, or perhaps too afraid to acknowledge. The taxi pulled up to our building, the home we'd created together, now feeling like a stage set where we'd been acting out roles neither of us truly inhabited. As Amanda marched ahead with her keys already in hand, I paused in the rain, watching her familiar silhouette become suddenly foreign. How could someone you share a bed with for years remain such a stranger? The storm intensified as we entered our apartment building, nature mirroring the tempest brewing inside me. Water dripped from my clothes onto the lobby's marble floor, creating dark puddles that tracked our progress to the elevator. Amanda stood as far from me as the small space allowed, staring at the illuminated numbers as we ascended in silence. Her perfume, the unfamiliar scent I'd noticed at the bar, filled the confined space, another reminder of the stranger she'd become. The door to our apartment, our supposed sanctuary, opened with the same key but felt like the entrance to a foreign territory. Everything looked exactly as I'd left it this morning, yet somehow altered, as if I were seeing our belongings through a distorted lens. "I'm going to change," Amanda announced, heading toward our bedroom without looking back. I remained in the entryway, water pooling beneath my shoes. Through the windows, lightning flashed, briefly illuminating the framed photos on our wall. Smiling faces from vacations, our wedding day family gatherings. A documented history of what I now realized might have been elaborate performances. Amanda emerged wearing dry clothes, her hair pulled back, makeup removed. She looked more like the woman I'd married, which somehow made everything worse. "We need to talk about what happened tonight," I said. "There's nothing to discuss." She busied herself with making tea, her back to me. "You're overreacting to an old friend greeting me affectionately. Is that what we're calling it?" Because from where I stood, it looked a lot like my wife being kissed by her lover. The mug in her hand clattered against the counter. "Don't be dramatic. Dramatic would be throwing your phone under a car." She turned, arms crossed. "You want to know the truth, Mike? Fine. I'm suffocating in this marriage. Every day is identical to the last. Safe, predictable, boring." Her voice rose with each word. "Living with you is like reading a book where all the pages are the same." I stepped closer, rainwater still dripping from my clothes. "You think I don't know? You think I haven't noticed how you light up when your phone buzzes? How you've been working late on Thursdays for months? How you've slowly erased every part of yourself that I fell in love with? Maybe those parts were never real." Her shout echoed in our kitchen. "Maybe I was playing a role you wanted me to play because it was easier than admitting I needed more." "More than what? More than someone who supports your every decision? More than someone who trusts you completely? Or just more excitement than a stable, loving relationship could provide?" A neighbor's door opened and closed in the hallway outside, witnesses to our private war. "You want to know when I changed my hair color last month?" she continued, shifting tactics. "Or noticed that I lost weight? Or realized I got a promotion? The fact that you're asking when the lying started means you weren't paying attention when the truth was right in front of you." Her words hit with calculated precision, each one finding its mark. I wondered how long she'd been rehearsing this speech, preparing for this inevitable confrontation. "This isn't about me not noticing your highlights, Amanda. This is about you and Brad and whatever game you've been playing behind my back." My phone would have buzzed again had it not been destroyed beneath rush hour traffic. Instead, Amanda's phone chimed from the counter. She lunged for it, but I was closer. The screen displayed a message from Work Project B. "Is he buying it? Stick to the script we discussed." Amanda snatched the phone from my hand. "That's private." Clearly. The single word carried the weight of my understanding. "Is that Brad's code name in your phone? Work Project B?" She didn't answer, which was answer enough. "How long, Amanda? How long have you been seeing him behind my back? Don't act self-righteous with me." Her eyes narrowed, voice dropping to a dangerous calm. "You didn't want a wife. You wanted a doll who would cook your meals and warm your bed and never disagree with your perfect little plans for our perfect little life. I wanted someone who wouldn't lie to my face." My voice broke slightly. "Someone who would tell me if she wasn't happy instead of creating an elaborate charade." The rain hammered against our windows, punctuating the silence that followed. "I changed everything for you," she finally said, her voice barely audible. "My friends, my job, even my favorite color after we got married. Now you're upset because you didn't know the real me? That's rich, Mike. I asked about your life every day. I tried to know you. You asked if I made dinner?" Her shout was laced with years of accumulated resentment. "You never once asked if I was happy." In a sudden burst of anger, she grabbed our wedding photo from the side table and hurled it against the wall. The glass shattered, fracturing our smiling faces into jagged pieces. "Is this what you and Brad do?" I asked, staring at the broken frame. "Break things for the drama of it all?" "At least with him I feel something," she spat. "Even if it's complicated and messy and sometimes painful, it's real. When was the last time you made me feel anything but secure?" She said secure, like it was an insult, a prison sentence rather than what I'd thought was a foundation. "Security," I said softly, "is what I thought we were building together. I didn't realize it was what you were running from." I stood amidst the wreckage of our argument, feeling as if the floor beneath me had turned to quicksand. The shattered wedding photo lay at my feet, a fitting metaphor for what our marriage had become. I moved through our apartment with new awareness, suddenly noticing details I'd been blind to for months. In our bedroom closet, behind my winter coats, hung a charcoal blazer I'd never seen before, too large for me, too tailored to be forgotten by some bygone guest. I touched the expensive fabric and Amanda's distinctive perfume, no, the unfamiliar one from tonight, clung to it like an accusation. On her desk, beneath a stack of urgent work documents, I found papers with Brad's name prominently displayed. Not just his name but shared financial projections, joint ventures, plans that stretched back months and forward for years. What are you doing? Amanda appeared in the doorway, arms crossed defensively. I held up the papers. Business partners too? How convenient. It's not what you think. Funny, that's exactly what someone would say when it's precisely what I think. In the bathroom, Amanda began removing her makeup with practiced efficiency. As she turned to reach for a towel, I noticed what she was trying to hide, a faint mark on her neck, expertly concealed until now. The lipstick smudge at the bar hadn't been from tonight's kiss, but from covering evidence of an earlier one. I returned to the living room, seeing our home with archaeological precision. The photos displayed on our walls chronicled not just our history but her gradual transformation. In the earliest images, her smile reached her eyes, her body language open and genuine. With each passing year, something withdrew, a light dimming incrementally until the most recent photos showed a woman performing happiness rather than experiencing it. Amanda followed me, her face now bare, all pretenses at least temporarily abandoned. You wanted the perfect wife, she said, her voice both accusatory and exhausted. You wanted a doll who would match your furniture and agree with your opinions and never disturb your comfort. I wanted you, I countered. The woman I met, fell in love with, built plans around. Not this performance. This performance kept you happy for 3 years. Her bitter laugh held no humor. You never complained when I changed my job to one that suited your schedule better. Or when I stopped seeing friends you found too dramatic. Or when I pretended to love sailing because it was your passion. Each example landed like a physical blow. Had I really been so oblivious? Why not just tell me you were unhappy? Because happiness wasn't what you wanted from me, it was compliance. Her voice rose with each word. Dinner ready at 6, sex on Saturdays, holiday with your parents in July, the Mike Chambers life plan with no deviations allowed. In a sudden fit of rage, she swept her arm across the bookshelf, sending our collection of travel guides, places we'd planned to visit someday, crashing to the floor. You never asked if I was happy, she shouted, her face flushed. You asked if I'd prepared dinner. The accusation stung precisely because a small voice inside whispered it might be true. Had I mistaken her accommodation for contentment? Had I been so focused on building our life that I'd forgotten to check if she wanted the same blueprint? So instead of talking to me, I said slowly, you found someone else. Someone exciting and unpredictable who made you feel alive again. Brad understands me in ways you never tried to. I moved to the kitchen drawer where we kept important documents, birth certificates, insurance policies, the foundations of adult life. Behind our marriage license, I found a slim leather book I'd never seen before. Amanda lunged for it but I stepped back, opening to a random page. Inside were dates, times, notes, a meticulous record of deception. Meetings with Brad scheduled around my business trips, coded references to hotels, even expenses carefully tracked. Some entries dated back 3 years, with the earliest marked the week of our wedding. You were seeing him before we got married? The realization knocked the breath from my lungs. Amanda's silence was confirmation enough. I flipped forward, finding an entry from just 2 months ago, our anniversary weekend. While I'd been preparing dinner downstairs, she'd stepped out to get some air in the garden. The journal recorded a different story. 8:17 p.m., called B from garden. Told him I wished we were celebrating together instead. 10 minutes. The most intimate moments of our marriage had included an invisible third person. Even our anniversary, a celebration of our commitment, had been tainted by her secret communion with him. How could you? My voice sounded foreign to my own ears. It wasn't planned, she said, her tone suddenly softer, almost rehearsed. We ran into each other at that industry conference in Boston. Things just reignited. The one right after our engagement? I felt physically ill. I tried to end it. Multiple times. Her eyes avoided mine. But then you'd do something so painfully predictable, so safely boring, and I'd call him just to feel something different. I closed the journal, the full weight of her betrayal finally settling on my shoulders. Our marriage hadn't collapsed tonight. It had been built on a faulty foundation from the very beginning. What I had thought was solid ground had been a house of cards all along, waiting for a strong enough wind to bring it crashing down. I want the complete story, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Everything. From the beginning. Amanda moved to the living room, taking her time to pour a glass of red wine. The deliberate way she swirled the liquid, holding it up to the light before taking a measured sip, reminded me of an actress preparing for a crucial scene. I followed, keeping the journal clutched in my hand like evidence at a trial. You want the whole story? She settled into her favorite armchair, the expensive one she'd insisted we needed. Fine. But you might not like what you hear. I've spent 3 years not hearing what I needed to. I think I can handle it now. She crossed her legs, smoothing her dress with practiced elegance. My life with you, Mike, has been a golden cage. Safe, comfortable, predictable to the minute. She took another sip of wine. With Brad, it's like riding a roller coaster. Terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. So our marriage was just too boring for you? The words tasted bitter. Our marriage was exactly what you wanted it to be. Her eyes met mine without remorse. The perfect wife, the perfect home, the perfect life, all according to the Mike Chambers blueprint for happiness. As she spoke, her story unfolded in reverse order, like a detective novel revealing its clues backward. Each memory she shared connected to an earlier deception, a more fundamental lie. Remember when you got that promotion last year? The celebration dinner where I seemed so happy for you? Her smile was cold. I just come from meeting Brad at that hotel downtown. I was glowing from being with him, not from pride in your accomplishment. Each revelation was a knife turning in my chest, but I forced myself to listen. I planned to leave you at least 3 times. She examined her nails casually. But then I'd think about the mortgage, the joint accounts, the life we'd built, and stability won out over passion. You were my safety net while Brad was my real desire. So I was just convenient? I asked, my voice hollow. You were useful. She shrugged. Brad provided what I needed emotionally, and you provided what I needed practically. A perfect arrangement, really? In her telling, Brad emerged as her necessary chaos, while I was merely her useful order. 2 men serving different functions in her carefully compartmentalized life. You got exactly what you wanted, Mike? Her voice took on a defensive edge. The perfect wife in public, the dedicated partner at company functions, the gracious hostess for your family holidays. I played my role flawlessly. As she spoke, the memories of our life together transformed before my eyes. Our first dance at our wedding, had she been thinking of him as I held her? The house we chose together, had she been imagining sharing it with someone else? The future we planned, had it all been fiction to her? Remember that song you thought was our song? A small, cruel smile played at her lips. Photograph, by Ed Sheeran? That was actually playing the first night Brad and I reconnected. I just never corrected you when you claimed it for us. She laughed softly, recalling my nervousness before meeting Brad for what I thought was the first time. You were so anxious to make a good impression on my old college friend. If only you'd known we'd been meeting at that hotel near your office every Thursday while you were at your weekly management meeting. Each confession came without a trace of remorse, only a strange relief, as if she'd been waiting for the opportunity to reveal her true self after years of performance. Did you ever love me at all? I asked, the question I'd been afraid to voice. She considered this with theatrical thoughtfulness. I love the idea of you. The stability. The future you represented. Her pause was perfectly timed. But during our wedding planning, when we discussed children, when we chose this apartment, I was thinking of him. Imagining a parallel life where I'd made different choices. She drained her glass and set it down with a sharp clink. If I'm being completely honest, and why not at this point, I'd say my feelings for you were always more theoretical than actual. Like appreciating a perfectly pleasant landscape painting that matches your furniture. My throat tightened. Why marry me if you loved him? Because he wasn't ready to commit and you were. Because you offered security while he only offered intensity. Because sometimes the safe choice seems like the smart one. She leaned forward. But safe becomes suffocating eventually, Mike. Your dependability became your biggest flaw. Instead of the guilt or remorse I'd expected, her confession culminated in accusation. If you had truly known me, really seen me, you would have noticed I was never fully yours. The signs were there from the beginning. You just chose not to see them because they didn't fit your perfect narrative. Rain continued to lash against the windows, nature's percussion accompanying her monologue. Lightning briefly illuminated her face, revealing not the woman I'd married but a stranger who had been living in my home, sleeping in my bed, planning a future she never intended to share. You know what's ironic? She smiled without warmth. You're free now. But I was never really yours to lose in the first place. I couldn't stay in that apartment another minute. The walls that once sheltered our shared life now seemed to close in, every corner holding a memory that had been rewritten by Amanda's confessions. Without a word, I grabbed my jacket and keys. "Where are you going?" Amanda asked, her tone suggesting mild curiosity rather than concern. "Away from here. Away from you." I didn't look back as I pulled the door closed behind me. Outside, the rain continued its relentless assault. I welcomed it, letting it soak through my clothes, hoping it might somehow wash away the betrayal that clung to me like a second skin. The city streets glistened under the lamplight, nearly empty at this late hour. I wandered without direction, a solitary figure straight out of an Edward Hopper painting, surrounded by urban light but utterly alone. My path took me through familiar neighborhoods that suddenly felt foreign. Past the cafe where we'd had our first date. Around the park where I'd proposed. Each landmark a monument to what I now understood was an elaborate fiction. After an hour of aimless walking, I found myself drawn to the neon glow of an old bar I'd never entered before. The last call read the weathered sign, the irony not lost on me. Inside, the warmth hit me first, then the smell of aged wood and whiskey. A handful of patrons hunched over their drinks, each wrapped in their own private world. I settled at the bar, water pooling beneath my soaked shoes. Rough night? The bartender was an older man with kind eyes and silver hair tied back in a short ponytail. He placed a napkin in front of me without waiting for an answer. "The roughest," I admitted. He nodded as if he'd heard it all before. "What's your poison?" "Something that burns." He produced a glass and a bottle of amber liquid. "On the house. You look like you need it more than I need the money." The whiskey scorched a path down my throat, momentarily distracting me from the deeper pain. I stared at my reflection in the mirror behind the bar, hair plastered to my forehead, eyes hollow, shoulders slumped under the weight of realization. "Want to talk about it?" the bartender asked, wiping down the counter with practiced motions. "I'm Tom. Been listening to troubles in this bar for 30 years. Nothing shocks me anymore. My wife's been having an affair. For years. Including before we were married." The words sounded strange spoken aloud, like I was describing someone else's tragedy. Tom stopped wiping. "Let me tell you a story about a gardener I knew. Man loved his garden more than anything. Had this beautiful tree he was particularly proud of. One winter he noticed some branches had died, but he couldn't bring himself to prune them. Thought it would hurt the tree. By spring the whole thing was diseased. Had to be cut down entirely." He leaned forward. "Sometimes what we're afraid to lose is already gone. We just haven't accepted it yet." His simple wisdom hit harder than any platitude could have. My marriage had been dead long before tonight, I just refused to see it. I finished my drink and headed back into the night, the rain now reduced to a gentle mist. On a street corner, a lone musician played guitar under an awning, his melancholy tune floating through the damp air. The song spoke of loss and liberation intertwined, an anthem for endings that make new beginnings possible. My phone had been destroyed, but a nearby payphone caught my eye. On impulse, I dropped in some change and called Dan's number, one of the few I knew by heart. "Hello." His voice was thick with sleep. "It's Mike. I need a place to stay tonight." "Where are you?" Instantly alert, no questions asked. The sound of true friendship. As I gave him my location, another call came in on the payphone, somehow impossibly directed to me. "Hold on," I told Dan, answering the incoming call with confusion. "Is this Mike Chambers?" A woman's voice, unfamiliar but determined. "Yes. How did you?" "I'm Valerie. Brad's ex. We need to talk." She paused, her breath audible over the line. "This isn't the first time they've done this. It's a game they play, finding new partners to manipulate. I was where you were 2 years ago." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Not only had I been deceived, but I'd been part of a pattern, a recurring role in their private theater of manipulation. By the time Dan found me, I was sitting on a bench by the harbor, watching the dark water ripple under the moonlight. In a gesture that felt both symbolic and necessary, I removed my wedding ring and held it over the water. "You sure about that?" Dan asked, settling beside me. I let the gold band fall from my fingers, watching it disappear beneath the surface with barely a sound. More sure than I've been about anything in 3 years. A man walking his dog passed by, nodding in recognition of something in my expression. "Heartbreak?" he asked simply. "That obvious?" "Been there myself." He smiled ruefully. 7 years gone in a night. Thought my life was over. Now I'm happier than I ever was with her. "Doesn't feel possible right now," I admitted. "Never does at first." He continued his path, calling over his shoulder, "But trust me, it gets better once you stop trying to save what's already gone." Dawn was breaking as Dan drove us to his apartment. We passed our old college campus, the place where we'd once shared dreams of the future, before mortgages and careers and failed marriages complicated everything. "Remember Professor Daniels?" Dan asked as the familiar buildings came into view. He always said, "The greatest disappointment is finally getting what you thought you wanted only to realize you wanted the wrong thing." As the first rays of sunlight pierced the clouds, illuminating the city with new light, I felt something unexpected stir within me, not happiness, not yet, but possibility. The faintest suggestion that beyond this darkness lay a version of myself I'd yet to discover. "Sometimes," I said, watching the new day break over the skyline, "you have to get lost to find yourself again." Dan's apartment became my temporary sanctuary, a bachelor pad transformed into what he jokingly called our man fortress amid chaos. The spare room with its mismatched furniture and haphazard decor felt more honest than the meticulously decorated home I'd shared with Amanda. On my third morning there, Dan placed a cup of coffee in front of me and settled into the chair opposite. "I need to tell you something," he said, his expression uncharacteristically serious. "I had suspicions about Amanda. For a while now." I looked up sharply. "What? Why didn't you say anything?" "What was I supposed to say?" "Hey buddy, I think your wife might be cheating on you, based on nothing but a gut feeling." He shook his head. "I saw her with Brad once about 6 months ago at that restaurant near your office. They seemed close. But it could have been innocent. I didn't want to blow up your happiness over what might have been nothing." The revelation stung, but I couldn't blame him. "I might not have believed you anyway," I admitted. I was too invested in the illusion. Over the following days, more pieces of the puzzle emerged from unexpected sources. Emily from my marketing team approached me hesitantly in the break room. "I feel terrible not saying something sooner," she confessed, nervously stirring her tea. "We saw Amanda and Brad at the Westview Hotel bar a few months ago. My husband recognized him from your company party. They were..." She trailed off. "They were what?" "Very affectionate. We decided not to interfere in your personal life." The fact that my marriage had been an open secret among colleagues added a new layer of humiliation to the betrayal. How many others had known? How many pitying glances had I missed? My meeting with the divorce attorney transformed from a legal consultation into something closer to therapy. Barbara Winters, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, listened to my story without judgment. "Marriage is essentially a contract," she said pragmatically. "When one party fundamentally breaches the terms, the other has every right to seek compensation and closure." As we reviewed our financial entanglements, I discovered evidence of Amanda and Brad's duplicity extending even to money. Credit card statements revealed charges for hotel rooms, expensive dinners, even weekend getaways, all during times when Amanda had claimed to be working or visiting friends. They had used our joint funds to finance their affair. "This strengthens your position," Barbara noted. "Financial infidelity on top of the emotional kind. The court will take that into consideration." While I was rebuilding, Amanda was apparently rewriting history. Through mutual friends, I learned she had begun a campaign to portray me as controlling and paranoid. According to her version, she'd been forced to seek understanding elsewhere because of my jealousy and unreasonable demands. "She's telling everyone you tracked her phone and interrogated her constantly," Melissa, one of our longtime friends, informed me during an awkward coffee meeting. "I didn't believe it, which is why I wanted to hear your side." The most unexpected encounter came at the supermarket, where I literally crashed carts with Amanda's parents. Jeffrey and Helen Harper had always been polite but distant, our relationship cordial rather than close. "Mike." Jeffrey acknowledged me with a stiff nod. Helen at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. "We know this is difficult," she offered, "but these things happen. We just want Amanda to be happy." "Were you aware?" I couldn't help asking. "About Brad? About the affair?" The flicker in Jeffrey's eyes told me everything. We always thought Brad was a better match for her, to be honest. More ambition, more fire. When they were together in college. "Jeffrey," Helen interrupted with a warning glance. "College?" I echoed. "They dated in college?" "For 3 years," Jeffrey confirmed, seemingly relieved to speak openly. "We were surprised when they broke up. Even more surprised when she introduced you. No offense." The revelation that I had never been Amanda's first choice, merely her safe alternative when things with Brad temporarily soured, was both painful and strangely liberating. The foundations of our relationship had been built on even shakier ground than I'd imagined. As the days passed, unexpected support emerged from a surprising ally. Lisa, Amanda's younger sister, contacted me through social media. "I need you to know I'm on your side in this," her message read. "Amanda and Brad have always been toxic together. They feed on drama like vampires feed on blood. You deserve better than being caught in their games." We met for coffee, and Lisa revealed the history I'd never known: how Amanda and Brad's relationship had always been a turbulent cycle of passion and betrayal, breakups and reconciliations. "When she met you," Lisa explained, "you represented everything their relationship wasn't: stable, kind, trustworthy. I think part of her genuinely wanted that. But people like Amanda and Brad, they get addicted to the chaos. Calm waters bore them." In the quiet evenings at Dan's apartment, I began to reassess what Amanda had thrown back at me as flaws. My predictability was actually reliability. My boring routine was stability. My lack of spontaneity was thoughtful planning. You know what I realized? I told Dan as we shared beers on his balcony one night. Everything Amanda despised about me are qualities most people actually value. She made me believe my strengths were weaknesses. "Because they highlighted her flaws," Dan replied. "Your consistency made her fickleness more obvious. Your honesty made her deception more inexcusable." For the first time since that night at the bar, I felt the faintest flicker of gratitude beneath the pain. Without realizing it, Amanda's betrayal had forced me to recognize my own worth, a value that existed independently of her approval or presence in my life. The notification started at 3 in the morning, a barrage of text messages from Amanda that evolved like movements in a twisted symphony. The first movement was accusation. "You've turned everyone against me. Are you happy now? You're making me look like the villain when you never gave me what I needed. How dare you talk to my sister behind my back?" I watched the messages appear on my new phone screen, maintaining my silence. By dawn, the second movement began: manipulation. "I'm not saying what I did was right, but you weren't innocent either. We both made mistakes. We should at least talk about this like adults. Don't you think we owe our marriage a conversation?" By afternoon, the third movement emerged: calculated nostalgia. "Remember our trip to Maine? How happy we were. I found the playlist from our first anniversary. I can't stop crying. Maybe we threw away something that could have been fixed." I shared the messages with Dan, who snorted in disbelief. Classic manipulation tactics. First attack, then guilt trip, then rewrite history. My ex did exactly the same playbook. "She's good at it," I admitted. "Lots of practice," he replied grimly. 2 weeks after moving out, I received an unexpected call from Craig, a colleague who had recently attended an industry event. "Thought you should know," he said awkwardly. "I saw Brad there with someone who wasn't Amanda. They seemed very intimate." Already? The news surprised me less than it should have. From what I overheard, it's been going on for a while. Maybe even overlapping with, The revelation that Brad had likely been cheating on Amanda even while she was cheating on me created an absurd triangle of deception. The perfect metaphor for our relationship. A twisted tango for three where everyone was dancing to different music. That night, as if sensing her position weakening, Amanda escalated. Around midnight, pounding on Dan's door woke us both. When we opened it, she stood swaying slightly, eyes glassy, reeking of wine. "Where is he?" she demanded, pushing past us into the apartment. "Mike, we need to talk." "It's midnight, Amanda," I said wearily. "And you're drunk. You destroyed everything," she shouted, gesturing wildly. 3 years of marriage, thrown away because you couldn't handle one mistake. Dan stepped between us. "This isn't the time or place for this discussion. Stay out of it," she snapped. "You always hated me. Always tried to come between us." "That's not true and you know it," Dan replied calmly. "I supported your relationship until I saw what it was doing to my friend." She collapsed onto the couch, her fury suddenly replaced by theatrical tears. "Everything's falling apart. Brad's distant. My friends are avoiding me. Even my parents are questioning my decisions." "Actions have consequences," I said simply. "That's all you can say?" Her voice rose again. "No compassion for what I'm going through?" Dan shook his head in disbelief. "Unbelievable. My ex did the exact same thing, created chaos and then blamed everyone else for the fallout." The next day, a thick envelope arrived at Dan's apartment addressed to me. Inside was a handwritten letter, unsigned but written in elegant penmanship. "To another victim of Amanda and Brad. You don't know me, but I was once where you are now. They have a pattern. They find people like us, honest, stable, trusting, and use us as props in their ongoing drama. When they're bored with stability, they create chaos. When they're bored with chaos, they seek stability. It's a cycle that never ends because the problem isn't who they're with, it's who they are. You're not the first. You won't be the last. The only victory is walking away completely. The letter included dates, locations, even photographs documenting previous relationships destroyed by their coordinated manipulation. My marriage hadn't been special. It had been one episode in a longer-running series. Within days, the final act of their performance began playing out in public. Amanda and Brad's social media accounts became battlegrounds of thinly veiled accusations and dramatic declarations. Some people pretend to be victims when they're really predators, Brad posted cryptically. Amanda responded with, "True colors always show eventually. Loyalty is clearly a forgotten concept." Their public meltdown escalated when Brad shared a lengthy post about toxic relationships and manipulative partners without naming names, while Amanda countered with vague references to betrayal from those closest to me. I watched their digital drama unfold with detached fascination, like observing a theater production from the back row. The realization that drama was their oxygen had never been clearer. My phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Brad's voice came through, surprisingly subdued. "We should talk man to man," he said. "There are things about Amanda you should know. Things that might help explain what happened." "I'm not interested in your version of events," I replied. "Or in being the next act in your drama. This isn't about drama. It's about closure." I laughed without humor. Shakespeare had it right. When sorrows come, they come not single spies but in battalions. You and Amanda are an entire battalion of sorrows I'm leaving behind. After hanging up, I received one final text from Amanda. "You'll regret letting me go. No one will ever love you like I did." I stared at it for a long moment before typing my response. "I only regret the time I wasted trying to hold on to someone who was never really there." Then I blocked her number, closed the digital door on that chapter of my life, and for the first time in weeks, slept without dreams. 3 months passed like seasons changing, gradual yet transformative. I found a new apartment in a neighborhood I'd always liked but Amanda had dismissed as too artsy. The space was smaller than our marital home but filled with light, floor-to-ceiling windows that bathed the minimalist furniture in natural brightness. Dan helped me move in, both of us sweating as we carried the few pieces I'd purchased to replace what I'd left behind. Each new item represented a choice made solely by me for me. "It suits you," Dan said, surveying the finished space. "Clean lines, nothing pretentious, lots of light." "No ghosts," I added. "No memories lurking in corners or echoes of arguments embedded in walls." The divorce proceedings moved forward with clinical efficiency. Barbara, my attorney, managed to keep interactions with Amanda's legal team largely impersonal. The financial untangling was complicated but progressing. Today marked my final visit to our old apartment to collect the last of my belongings. Books, records, the few family heirlooms I couldn't bear to leave behind. I timed my visit for when Amanda would be at work, but as I unlocked the door for what I planned to be the last time, I found her waiting inside. She looked different, hair cut short in an edgy style, clothes darker and more artistic than the polished business attire she'd favored during our marriage. She'd transformed herself again, like a chameleon adapting to a new environment. "I thought we should talk," she said, her voice softer than the last time we'd spoken. "Face to face. Just once more." I maintained my distance, moving to the bookshelves to begin boxing what was mine. "I'm just here for my things." "You look good," she observed. "Different somehow. 3 months of freedom will do that." She flinched slightly but recovered quickly. "I've been doing a lot of thinking, a lot of soul-searching. I made terrible mistakes, Mike. I was looking for myself in all the wrong places, in all the wrong people. I destroyed us both in the process." The performance was flawless, vulnerable yet dignified, remorseful without being pathetic. I wondered how many times she'd rehearsed it in front of a mirror. "Where's Brad?" I asked, continuing to pack methodically. "That's over." Her voice hardened briefly before softening again. "It was a mistake. He wasn't who I thought he was." As she spoke, her phone lit up on the coffee table. The name Jackson appeared with a heart emoji beside it. The cycle continued with a new cast member. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, not sorry at all. She moved closer, that familiar perfume, her original one, not the one she'd worn with Brad, surrounding me like a memory. "I've been thinking about us. About what went wrong. Maybe I was looking for something that was right in front of me all along." I concentrated on wrapping a framed photograph of my parents in bubble wrap. "Don't do this, Amanda." "Do what? Express regret? Try to make amends?" She touched my arm lightly. People make mistakes, Mike. Sometimes terrible ones. But they can change. I've changed. I finally looked at her directly. The problem was never that you changed, Amanda. The problem was that you were never honest about who you really were. Her eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly, a crack in the performance. That's not fair. Isn't it? You told me yourself you were playing a role from the beginning. While packing the bedroom closet, I found an old notebook buried under sweaters I rarely wore. Opening it revealed pages of dreams and plans I'd written before our marriage. Career aspirations, travel goals, creative projects I'd set aside in favor of building a stable life with Amanda. She followed me, still talking about growth and second chances. Maybe we could try again? I've learned so much about myself. About what I really need. I closed the notebook and added it to my box. So have I. What's that supposed to mean? It means I've learned what authentic love looks like. It doesn't manipulate. It doesn't lie. It doesn't make you question your worth or your reality. Her strategy shifted, tears welling in her eyes. I never stopped loving you, Mike. Not really. I was confused, lost. The way I feel when I'm with you, it's different. It's real. The problem isn't whether you've changed, I said gently. The problem is that I have. As I carried the last box to my car, our new neighbor was bringing in groceries. He nodded in recognition. You must be the husband, he said. Saw your wife with some guy yesterday. Tall fellow, designer glasses. Ex-husband, I corrected. And she's not my concern anymore. Driving away from that building for the final time felt like shedding a skin that no longer fit. I stopped at a cafe in my new neighborhood, ordered a coffee and opened my laptop to browse job listings. A position at a company in Seattle caught my eye. Creative direction for a firm whose values aligned with my own, in a city I'd always wanted to explore. Before Amanda, I would have dismissed it as too risky, too far. Now, the distance and challenge appealed to me. I began drafting an application, excitement building as I imagined a fresh start in a new place. My phone chimed with a message from Lisa. Just checking in. Hope you're doing okay. You deserve honest love. Amanda never knew how to give that. I smiled at her message, appreciating her unexpected friendship in the aftermath of destruction. As I typed a reply, I realized I was no longer defined by what I'd lost, but by what I'd found, strength I didn't know I possessed, clarity I'd never experienced, and the freedom to become the person I was always meant to be. The cafe's wide windows framed the street outside, people moving purposefully through their lives. For the first time in months, I felt aligned with that forward motion, no longer stuck in the amber of betrayal but propelled toward a future entirely of my own making. Sometimes, the most beautiful growth emerges from the most complete devastation. From the ashes of what was, something authentic was finally taking flight.